Welcome back to Living the Hobby Farm Dream. This is our episode number 5, and we're going to be talking today about bringing a horse to your hobby farm. Before we do that, we just wanted to talk just a minute about how we're going to be doing these podcasts on the 2nd and the 4th weeks of every month. And so that's something that you can look forward to and hopefully tune in and listen to those when you can. We're excited to have you here. Today we're going to be talking about bringing a horse onto your property, onto your hobby farm, because that's something that we have some experience with. And first of all, I'd like to emphasize before we tackle the cost and some of the things to do with bringing a horse to your hobby farm, some of the important things that we learned while buying the horses that we have bought. It's sad to say, but everyone is not always honest when selling their horse. We were beginner horse riders, and we were sold a horse for our first horse that was not as well trained as the owners told us it was. And because we were beginners, you have to be more cautious because we're not familiar with a lot of things to do with horses. Make sure that you take a very knowledgeable a woman or a horseman along with you to look at your horses. We did that the second time, and we were able to get a much better horse that had better training. We also paid for a vet check before we purchased our horse, Ruby. In addition, if you are a beginner, it is well worth having a trainer to guide you on your journey of horsemanship. And when you purchase a horse that is well trained and you are a beginner, your trainer will be able to help you to have more success on your horse and gain the confidence needed to ride and care for your horse. And of course, there's always a safety issue to make sure that you get a horse that's perfect for your ability level, and also a trainer that's going to help you and teach you about safety around horses, because they are big animals. And it's most important that you have an animal that is well trained and that you're safe when you're riding your horse. When we bought Ruby, we paid $2,800 for her, and that was 10 years ago. At the time, she was a 10-year-old registered American quarter horse with a great lineage and training. And in 2025, the average cost to buy a horse, at least here in Arizona, is between $1,000 and $15,000 plus, depending on what kind of training they've had, depending on what you want to do with your horse. Obviously, you're going to pay more if it's a horse that has lots of training and lots of background, and it depends on just what you want to do with your horse. For us, we just wanted a beginner horse that we could use on our farm, that we could have her around for horse camps, and she would be a gentle horse that children could be around and people visiting the farm could be around, and one that we could learn how to ride. And keeping a horse on your own property in Arizona generally costs between $200 and $500 per month, and that's heavily dependent upon things like hay prices, which can fluctuate. Obviously, if you have to board your horse for a while before you can get your land or your place where you can have a horse, it's going to cost more. That'll be, at least here in Arizona, $350 a month to board a horse, plus depending on how much care they give and what facilities are available. For hay here in Arizona, it's usually about $18 a bale here in Arizona. We feed Ruby alfalfa and a little Bermuda hay, and that's what she eats twice a day. Also, the supplemental feed sometimes that you need to give your horse might be something like sand colic. We buy that for our horses, or if there's something that keeps off flies. Sometimes there's other things to do with their arthritis or other things as they get older. Our farrier charges $160 for shoeing Ruby, which is about every 8 weeks, and that's because she wears special shoes because of the slant of her feet. She gets those feet trims and new shoes, like I said, about every 8 weeks, so that's another cost that you'll have if you bring a horse onto your property. And also the other thing that we do buy for our horse are bedding, like shavings to go in her cage as we clean it out. It keeps it dry. Horses poop and urinate a lot, and so those are 2 things that you need to have, is some bedding in their stalls if they're kept in stalls. If they're out in pasture, you probably won't use as much bedding, but that's something that's also an expense that you need to think about. Our horse vet comes 2 times a year out here in the spring and in the fall. She comes for shots, and these cost about $160 for shots, and then she also does a wellness check. 4 core vaccines that our horse gets are the West Nile virus, the Eastern and Western encephalomyelitis, which is sleeping sickness, the tetanus, and the rabies. It's important that you keep up with their vaccinations because that's what keeps them healthy. And right now we have Ruby by herself here, and so she's not as likely to get other diseases by being around a lot of horses. She's just here on the farm. We don't take her a lot of places, but you still need to make sure they get those basic, at least core vaccines to keep them healthy. Our vet brings people in to do teeth checks or floating, which they call for horses, which involves filing down the sharp points in the horse's teeth for their comfort. The filing or floating down the teeth happens about once a year or every 2 years, just depending on how their teeth are doing and how many sharp parts are on their teeth. The cost for us here in Arizona is about $150 each time they come to do that. And also emergency care for your horse can also quickly add up if there's some reason the vet has to come out for an emergency. Keeping a horse on your own property removes the boarding fees that you normally would get, but it also requires, especially in the beginning, investing in fencing, shelter, and also sometimes water. We have some smaller pastures here for grazing, but generally speaking, we still provide supplements, especially during the cooler months when there's not as much grass, in the way of grass, hay, and alfalfa that we have to purchase from somebody. We can get our hay here at a place called Cahoots that has hay for sale there. There are also local people around that sell hay out where we live. Alfalfa and grass hay grows very well here, so there are a lot of places around in the valley here where we live where you can get hay for your horses and other animals. Another cost of having a horse on your property can be senior horses or older horses. A lot of times they have specialized feed as they get older because of their teeth or other reasons they're not able to chew the grass hay. And so that's another expense you have to think about as your horse gets older. If you're a beginner like we were, you may need also to consider the cost of a trainer and riding lessons if that's what you wanted to do with your horse. It's very important if you bring a horse to your property that you need to exercise them by riding them. It can be on your property, or if you have a trailer or a friend has a trailer, you can take them out on rides on the trail or go to horse facilities to practice with them. Our horse, Ruby, we put her out in the pastures a lot where she can stretch and run and just be a horse and have the freedom. They're big animals. They need to be kept somewhere where they can get out of their stalls and exercise. If you can, it's best to have 2 horses on your hobby farm for company. They're herd animals and they need another horse to be with them. If you can't do that, they can live alone if there are other herd animals with them. We've had a lot of luck here with Ruby having our sheep here because sheep are herd animals also, and they've bonded and they like to be together. Even though we put Ruby inside her pasture and her stall because she's such a big animal for the sheep's safety, they like to still eat side by side by the fence, and they like to be together and they call to each other when they can't see each other. As you can see from the price of a horse, a lot of times that's the cheapest thing about having a horse. Horses can cost a great deal, and we think of our horse as a hobby horse and enjoy riding her and teaching children and family about horses through farm tours and horse camps. And keeping track of what we spend over the past year on feeding our horse, just to kind of get an idea. And we pay about $338 a month for the things that we get for our one horse, Ruby. And that includes Bermuda and alfalfa, hay, and shavings. For us, we use our horse to make up for some of the cost of having a horse. The things that you can do for that we've done have been like horse camps. A few times a year in the cooler times of the year, we've had a group of children over to have a horse camp. And we would charge about $120 for about 4 days of the horse camp. It might depend on where you live, what you can charge. With that $120, the children get to know horses. They get to help the horse and care for the horse. They brush her tail and her mane and her hair. And then they also learn how to pick her feet. They learn some basic care of her as far as what she eats. They get to feed her some treats. And during our horse camp, they also get to ride on her and learn some very, very basics about riding a horse, how to sit on a saddle, how to get her to go, the things that they need to do, how to stop a horse. We also talk about the parts of a saddle. They also get to walk her around with a lead rope, how to lead a horse around in the pasture. She's very gentle with them when they're on her. And so they can learn to get some confidence and understand how to ride a horse and how to control a bigger animal. That's all done with lots of supervision, of course. We also learn about the parts of a horse. We have a drawing of a horse, and they get to learn and memorize the parts of a horse on a horse's body. They also do art projects and crafts that have to do with horses. They get to spend time with them and learn a lot about them just by being with them, and it's a calming thing for them. Also with our horse and our other farm animals, we've had sheep and chickens and turkeys on our property as well as Ruby. They get to be around these farm animals. A lot of these children are from the city and they have never been on a farm before. And so it's good for them to see what animals are like, what they feel like, what they smell like, and how they act. They're able to be here for these little small groups of children that come, and we charge for that also for them to come to our place and see these animals. A lot of times we'll talk about these animals and what they take to feed the animals, what it takes to be around them, what kind of treats they like. With the horse, we'll let them brush the horse and feed it some treats. With the sheep, we let them take some of the wool in their hands and feel like what the wool feels like. We teach them how to card the wool. They also get to do an art or a craft in that when we have school kids come out to our farm. We also allow them to go in the garden and pull some carrots and do some things like that. So it's a whole total farm experience. And that's another way that you can make some money on your farm with your farm animals. Another thing that we've done with our horse is we've used her for therapy, and she's very good with kids with autism or special needs. She seems to know that there's someone on her that needs some extra special care. And that's another reason why we wanted to get a better, well-trained horse. And she's been really good with those children on her back. And she is really good to let them stroke her or brush her. And so that's another thing that you can use if you have a horse on your property, is for special needs kids they can feel something from being around a horse. Another thing about having a horse on your property is they do take care. You will need to muck out their stalls. We try to have Ruby out on the grass as much as possible. There's still work to be done. We have to muck out the stalls probably once a week because we just have the one horse. If you had more horses, obviously you'd have to muck them out more often, and that means taking a pitchfork or a shovel or a rake and getting the poop out of the stall. And you have to have a place to put that. We've used it to fertilize underneath our trees. Since our horses eat Bermuda and they also eat alfalfa, we try to keep it where there's grass in our yard. You can compost it. It takes quite a long while to compost their manure. So mostly we just put it around our trees or spread it around. Some of the care of horses also is that they have to have a salt block to lick where that she can have the salt whenever she needs it. We also have to put, like I said, the shavings in there to help with the moisture from the urine. We have to rake out the horse manure out of our pastures periodically and mow the grass down, the part that she doesn't get, because wherever horses poop, they won't eat the grass where there's poop. So you have to clean that out periodically so that she'll eat more of the grassy areas. We have some shade trees or fruit trees in the backyard, and we've had to put some fencing around those for the horse because horses will chew on your trees. They like to, especially if they're bored, they'll chew on them and chew the bark, and they could kill your tree. So that's something to consider if you have horses in your pasture and you have trees, is you're going to have to fence them off or they're going to get chewed on by your horses. When you do let your horses out in a pasture, you need to have secure fencing. We have found that they do push some against the fences, so you need to have secure fencing so they can't get out and so that they're safe. You need to make sure there's not sharp edges on the fence. We've had a little problems with that. Make sure that you check your fence often to make sure it's sturdy, that there's no sharp places where your horses could get hurt on. As far as treats for your horses, usually it's best to give them things that are out of the garden, like beets or carrots, possibly oranges, things like that. It's good not to give them treats too often. It's really hard when they're on your hobby farm and everyone wants to spoil them. It's something that you need to learn, that a treat should just be occasionally, not all the time. And we found the best way to bond with your horse is to spend time with them. It can even just be grooming them. It can be just mucking out the stall with them in there while they're eating. Just spending lots of time with them where you can bond with them. They like the grooming and they like the time spent with them, and they will bond to you really, really quickly. They say that horses never forget someone that they've known in their lives. And especially I think if we're kind and good to our farm animals, I think they will want to be around us and will like us and bond with us. And also one of the very best ways that you can bond is to ride your horse a lot and become a better horsewoman or horseman. They will bond with you through learning to ride them. Also, we've introduced our grandchildren to horses. They've been afraid of our horse when they were young, but then my older granddaughter is able to now sit on her and not be afraid when we're walking her around, and she does not live close by, so we can't spend as much time riding as we'd like with her, but she's gaining more confidence around her and likes to ride her and pet her and give her treats. So just having children around a good horse is good for them, and it takes time, and they get confidence as they spend more time and as they grow up and realize that horses are a great animal and one that they can learn something from and that they can get close to. But again, horses are big animals, and with children, you need to make sure that you are always keep an eye on them so that they don't get hurt, because horses are big animals and they wouldn't mean to hurt a child, but they could if they are left unattended. So make sure that you keep your eyes on your children or grandchildren when they're around horses. So our horse Ruby is part of the main reason that we started our hobby farm, and we're able to get land so that we could bring her out here with us. And so we'd highly recommend having a horse, but we also caution that you need to make sure that you kind of look into more of what you're doing and take someone with you if you are getting a horse. We took horse lessons for a while before we even considered buying a horse. So make sure you take horse lessons and decide if this is really what you want to do, if you really want to bring a horse to your property, because they're beautiful, big animals, but they do require some knowledge and some training and lessons in order to be able to find out if they really are the right animal for you on your farm. If you've grown up with horses and know horses, then that's great. But if you don't, like us, and you're a beginner, I would strongly suggest that you go visit lots of horses, that you take riding lessons, and make sure that this is a right fit for you on your farm. If for some reason you get a horse and it's not the right fit, it's okay to decide that this isn't right for you on the farm. But we've really, really enjoyed Ruby. She's been a great asset to our little hobby farm, and the children that come here, the people that come here really enjoy her. And she's been a good fit for us, and we're really, really glad that we have her on our hobby farm. And she means a lot to us and has made our hobby farm even better. So we would suggest it for you if you think that a horse will work. We hope that you'll give it a try. And our next podcast will be about baby doll sheep, and we hope you'll tune into that. That's one of our favorite animals that we have on our farm too, and we'll give you all the information and the experience that we have with baby doll sheep. Have a good day. Thank you for listening.